The first presentation will be by Professor Susan Schneider, who holds the Baruch Blumberg NASA Library of Congress Chair in Astrobiology and is the founding director of a new center on the future of the mind at Florida Atlantic University. The title of her presentation is AI, A Lion Life and the Future of the Mind. We are happy you are with us today, Dr. Schneider.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you, at least remotely. Okay, so I would much rather be in Italy, which is a favorite country of mine. But what I'm going to do in 20 minutes is give you a quick rundown of some issues I raised in my book, including my work with NASA. Now, I had to turn off the chat. So if you have any problems, any technical problems, the organizers have my phone. You can call me. Also, I'm going to open my email. Well, you know what? It might shut down because it wants a code. But just call me if you have any technical problems. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started or interrupt. Feel free to interrupt the talk. Someone's actually, oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to start with a thought experiment. I'm a philosopher. Let's suppose that it's 2045 and you're out shopping. I know a lot of you here are transhumanists, so you might like the idea of walking into a Center for Mind Design. So suppose you walk into such a place, there's a menu before you, it lists all kinds of great brain enhancements with funky names. So you can get hive mind, for example, if you want to connect with people, instantly. You could upgrade your cognitive capacities by getting mathematical skills or enhanced attention. You could buy something called Zen Garden if you want to get the Zen states of a grandmaster. You could do all of this if you pay money, all right? And I'm excited by the possibility of enhancement. I've been a transhumanist for some years, but I'm a bit skeptical about just being able to purchase any enhancement, and I want to tell you why today. So this talk will concern the future of the mind. It's about how our understanding of ourselves, our minds, and our very nature can change the future for better or worse. So today what I'll ask is, at a place like the center, could you truly merge with AI? I've been fascinated by the idea of merging with artificial intelligence since I first read Ray Kurzweil's books years ago. And here's a roadmap of where we're going in the next 20 minutes. First, some background, which I'll probably speed through very quickly. Then I will argue that enhancement will unfortunately hit design ceilings. And that makes me sad to say. And Third and finally, I will, as NASA chair, make some quick comments about the cosmic significance of these issues. All right, so some background here. So, the brain's evolution was obviously constrained by all sorts of things like the environment, one's metabolism, neuroanatomy. But AI in principle, when turned inward on the human brain, could augment intelligence at a rate that's much faster than biological evolution. Well, I call this new enterprise mind design. And if you think about it, it's a kind of intelligent design, one that's hopefully not going to, land me a lot of negative email. I just mean by that, that we are hopefully intelligently designing ourselves if we use something like brain chips to enhance ourselves at the Center for Mind Design. Well, I find the prospect of mind design quite humbling because frankly, we're not terribly evolved. We walk the moon, we harness the energy of the atom, yet racism, greed, and violence are all too commonplace. Our social development often lags behind our technology. So I think what we should do, even if this is 20 years into the future, that we begin to augment our own intelligence through artificial means in some real radical way, I think we need to start talking about it now. So let's go back to the center. So there you are, you're in line, you're waiting for your order, and they tell you that if you wait a little longer, maybe come back in a few weeks, they may have a new menu item. They say, suppose if the clinical trials do go as planned, customers will soon be able to purchase an enhancement bundle called Merge, a series of enhancements that will allow you to gradually augment and then transfer all of your mental functions to the cloud over a period of, say, 5 years. So let me ask you again, could you merge with artificial intelligence? Well, before I answer, or try to answer, a few preliminaries. First, you might ask, well, what the heck do you mean by merging? And secondly, I'm not sure this crowd will worry about how speculative it is, but some people will worry that it's quite speculative. Well, as you know, transhumanists believe that humans can overcome their biological limitations through science and technology, and they offer a sort of trajectory, or at least many of them do. I mean, I don't mean to lump everybody in the same class here, but I only have 20 minutes. So, you know, you can imagine walking into the Center for Mind Design as an unenhanced human and having significant upgrades with cognitive and other physical enhancements until you're no longer technically human over the years. You could even eventually, if the enhancements were really good and you lived a long time, become super intelligent. You could be yourself more artificial than anything. And in a sense, you'd be a super intelligent AI, an AI that is by definition smarter than an unenhanced human in every respect, social skills, mathematical reasoning, and more. Well, transhumanists tend to say that these enhancements will increasingly, over time, as they get more sophisticated, involve actually replacing parts of the brain with AI components. Now, I'm only going to focus on those kinds of enhancements today. Okay, I have minutes. And those are the ones that I have the most worries about, although I do have some other worries about even sort of exoskeletons that you put on at the beginning of the day and take off. Okay, so transhumanism is already important to discuss. So, you know, if you think it's a speculative issue, I think it's worthwhile philosophically because it raises what I see as fundamental philosophical issues that have been around for a really long time. Like, does consciousness transcend the brain? Further, it connects in really interesting ways with cognitive science, which views the mind as a sort of software program. And finally, when thinking of the future, don't commit what's called the Jetsons fallacy. Don't think that AI will just give us better bells and whistles, cleaning our homes and, you know, having intelligent robots and maybe scary super intelligences. Instead, AI will work on our minds too. AI will not just transform the world, it will transform us. Okay, and today there are all sorts of projects. I can't go into all the projects, but you know, even now, people like Elon Musk talk about having, I'm quoting here, having some sort of merger of biological intelligence and machine intelligence. And he's founded a company, Neuralink. You could see some videos of the progress at YouTube. Ted Berger has done really impressive work on the artificial hippocampus, part of the brain designed to encode new memories. There's a lot of work in North America with the Defense Department, Facebook. I'm not real happy that they're working on this. Kernel, Google. So, you know, it's kind of a big wave in AI. You may not be as aware of it, but it's going on all around us right now. Okay, so now I want to turn to some design ceilings. As a philosopher, these are the kinds of things that I worry about, issues kind of at the boundary of science and philosophy. You know, it's always hard to find that point of contact and, you know, what's the domain of science and what's the domain of philosophy, but I love those issues. Okay, so the design ceilings that I will raise are actually limits on human intelligence enhancement, potential limits, I should say. They're not imposed by evolution. They're not imposed even by technology, although there will inevitably be medical limits. They are philosophical. Those are the ones I want to focus on. First, I want to tell you about a consciousness ceiling, and that arises if microchips fail to underlie conscious experience. Second, I want to tell you about a self ceiling. a point beyond which the person who attempts to enhance is no longer the same individual they were before, because sadly, the procedure causes one to cease to exist. Now, I talk about some of this in my book, Artificial You, AI in the Future of Your Mind. And I also talk about this in op-eds for the Financial Times and the New York Times. So I think many of you know what consciousness is, but you know, when you see the rich hues of a sunset, it feels like something to be you. In fact, every moment of your waking life, and even when you dream, there's a feeling to what it's like to be you. Consciousness is the felt quality of experience. Richard Dawkins said, "It's not obvious to me that a replacement of our species by our own technological creations would be a bad thing." Well, in response to Dawkins, think about this. If non-conscious machines supplant biological intelligence, the singularity would actually be a nightmare. It would represent the end of consciousness on Earth. This leads me to raise very quickly the consciousness ceiling. What if you did bi-merge at the Center for Mind Design? If AI is not conscious, merging is bad, because microchips would be the wrong stuff for consciousness. So a mind-machine merger can't happen. If you tried, you would lose your consciousness and your mind would arguably no longer exist. That would be an enhancement wall, a wall on human enhancement. AI, in contrast, wouldn't have such a wall. Now, I'm not saying machines won't be conscious. In my book, Artificial You, the first half of the book is on the issue of whether machines can be conscious. And I actually take a wait and see approach. I don't think it's clear that either side in the debate, the transhumanists who usually think machines will be conscious, or people like John Searle, either side are correct. I think there's a middle of the road position. It's really empirically based. And I also think that we need to develop tests for machine consciousness. And I have developed a few of them. One's being patented by Princeton University with Edwin Turner, who's a professor at Princeton. And the other one is called the chip test, which has to do with neural prosthetics. Now, all this being said, I want to quickly turn to a different possible ceiling that we have to bear in mind. This one I call the self-ceiling. Suppose that machine consciousness is possible and the consciousness ceiling doesn't arise. We can, in fact, put microchips in the head in the areas of the brain that underlie conscious experience without losing consciousness. Can you bi-merge then? Well, I propose that there are some difficult decisions you'll have to make. In order to understand whether you should enhance, you need to first understand what you are to begin with. But as I've been saying now for 10 years, we have to ask some philosophical questions here. What is a person? Would you continue to exist, or after the enhancement, would you have been replaced by someone or something else? Here, we get into some intricate issues in the field of metaphysics, the area of analytical philosophy that I work in, that considers issues about what features of a person or an object are essential for it to continue existing. So for example, consider an espresso machine. You might think if you vaporize the machine with some science fiction ray gun, it ceases to exist because it loses certain features that are important. It would lose certain essential properties. On the other hand, if you just change its color, that feature or property of the machine, its color, is irrelevant to it continuing to exist. Well, my point here is this. Even if enhancement brings superintelligence, it had better not involve the elimination of any of your essential properties. In that case, just so you understand, you don't really merge with AI. You can't. You cease to exist. You don't merge with artificial intelligence. You actually die in the process. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't opt to enhance anyway. There's some subtle decisions here. For example, you might believe you're going to die anyway and value a survivor, some creature that follows you, that's like you. But the important thing to note is you didn't merge. It's a conceptual error to think you did. Because even if the technology works, the sharper mind would be experienced by someone or something else. That leads me to the self-sealing then. This is a point beyond which the person who tries to enhance is no longer the same person they were before, because the very procedure at the Center for Mind Design that they're paying money for actually causes them to cease to exist. So that's a candidate for the Darwin Award, potentially. I mean, if somebody actually did it to survive, it is. And the person needs to think before they decide to enhance, what are we? What is a person to begin with? What is it for a self to continue? I'm not suggesting we shouldn't try to enhance. I'm suggesting we should understand the issues, that's all. So I think in trying to understand the issues, one needs to delve in to the literature on the nature of the person in the field of metaphysics. So for example, one view, which is very influential, is a simple brain-based materialism that says that you are essentially your brain, and you could say also your nervous system. But if that's the case, you're not going to survive a radical procedure like merge. Another very influential view is the psychological continuity view, which says you are essentially your memories and your ability to reflect on yourself. And that goes all the way back to Locke and Nietzsche, some of the most interesting philosophers around. And transhumanists endorse often, they often endorse a view called Patternism, which I take as being related. In fact, I kind of suspect it's a version of the psychological continuity view. And that view says the following. It says that what's essential to you is your computational configuration. So the sensory systems and subsystems that your brain has, the association areas of the brain that integrate the basic sensory subsystems, the neural circuitry that makes up your domain general reasoning, your attention. Together, all this stuff forms a sort of algorithm that your brain computes. And what is essential is the continuation of the algorithm. The actual neurons themselves don't matter. You just need to continue your pattern. So you could replace your neurons with computational duplicates and maybe even highly sophisticated, more sophisticated brain chips than what you started with at the neural level to be smarter, to add perceptual skills. And your pattern, your algorithm, in some sense, changes but still continues. There's also the soul theory. And there's importantly something that is called the no self view. And for example, I think some transhumanists adopt this. Jim Hughes is an example, and Nick Bostrom sometimes seems to read that way. On this view, there's really no self to begin with. There's just something like bundles of impressions. So, you know, this view is connected with the work of the philosopher Derek Parfit, and of course the Buddha. The Buddha is said to have held something like there's no survival because there's really no person. And here I'm lumping a bunch of views together. And Nietzsche says the I is a grammatical fiction, and I think that was clearly his view. Okay, so given all these differences, could you really merge with AI? You may see that each of the views about personal identity has a different answer. So you really need to think about it before you try to merge. Brain-based materialism, it would suggest the following, and this is in red on my slide. It would suggest neurotechnology should actually develop biological brain enhancements and minimal AI enhancements that don't replace or damage key parts of the brain, okay? So that's not merging with AI in the full-blown sense that Kurzweil envisioned. The soul theory, it's basically like talk to your religious advisor. You know, maybe in the future we will see people grappling with these issues with their religious advisors. The no self view, well, you don't merge with AI because you don't survive from minute to minute. You could strive to enhance for other reasons, but you don't survive. What about patternism? That was the view that a lot of transhumanists believe. Well, one problem is I don't know, and I don't know anybody that claims they really definitively know when a pattern begins or ends. So maybe it's cool, maybe it's okay to delete a few bad chess playing habits or even a year of your life, I don't know. But what about serious mind sculpting endeavors where you're adding complete new abilities? You know, how do we know we really survive? Like, when does the pattern end? So it's really not clear you should merge with AI, even on the transhumanist favorite view, at least if you sign up for the procedure hoping that you will survive and you're doing it for that reason. This all leads me to throw my hands up. I take a stance of metaphysical humility, and I hope other people consider this. I by no means suggest a ban on enhancements. I might do it myself one day. I just think we need to think about the issues. I think claims about the survival that involve a person transferring their mind to a new substrate, making drastic alterations to their brain, they need to be carefully thought through. And that's what my book, Artificial You, aims to do. Bear in mind that no two philosophers agree about this stuff, and they think about it all the time. So that's the gist. Now, because this talk was about aliens as well, I'll tell you about my NASA project if you'd like, and then I'll close up. That'll be it. So, you know, what I do for NASA is I think about cosmic issues and the possibility that there may be life on other planets and what that means, how to define life and whatnot. And, you know, my own suspicion is this. There may be all sorts of life out there, and it may even survive its technological maturity. So it may get complex and it may form societies. Some of those societies may survive and get technological. And I suspect if they do, they'll have something like their own singularity. They'll be turning on their own computers. They'll be enhancing their own brains. And I suspect that the most intelligent of these civilizations will actually be what I call post-biological. That is, they will have emerged from biological civilizations and become synthetic, because I think synthetic intelligences have a greater potential to be smarter. So that's not just my view, by the way. And this is something that Paul Davies has been saying for years, Seth Shostak, Martin Rees, Stephen Dick, the NASA historian. So, you know, there's a respectable group of people in astrobiology who do suspect this. And of course, that's not to say there is intelligent life out there. Okay, so the big picture takeaway then is this. My stance of metaphysical humility is one that we have to think about not just on Earth, we have to think about it in relation to what's out there, because it could be that these issues of design ceilings, you know, what the wall is on the enhancement of biological beings, if any wall exists, these are not just issues arising for Earthlings. These may actually be issues arising for beings in intelligent civilizations throughout the universe. Wow, that's sobering. Let's think this through. You know, Carl Sagan said in Contact, you're an interesting species, an interesting mix. You're capable of beautiful dreams and horrible nightmares. So we can't control what happens on other planets, but let's try to get it right on Earth. So let's have conceptual clarity when we think about the future of the mind in relation to emerging technologies. Remember, let's get it right. Technological prowess, that's not enough. To flourish, we need to actually appreciate the philosophical issues that lie beneath the algorithms. Thank you.